Zina's breath came in ragged gulps as she gripped the steel rail of the hospital bed. The fluorescent lights above cast a harsh glow across the delivery room, yet she felt suspended in a bubble of primal pressure and pain. Contractions slammed into her chest like waves crashing against a cliff, each one more punishing than the last. 5 more pushes, Zina. You're doing incredible, urged Nurse Eka, her voice calm but urgent. Sweat drenched Zina's forehead, stinging her eyes. She squeezed Kwame's hand, seeking any spark of comfort. But he stared resolutely at the floor, jaw clenched so tightly it threatened to crack his porcelain skin. Kwame, Zina gasped between contractions, voice trembling. Look at me. He met her gaze for a fleeting second, eyes glazed, hollow. I can't, he whispered, voice so low she barely heard him. I'm sorry. The words gutted her like a blade. In that instant, Zina realized this birth was entirely her battle. A fresh contraction roared through her, and she arched her back, nails digging into the bed's metal frame. A single tear carved a line down her cheek. Come on, Mama, Ike murmured, brushing the tear away. Let's bring this baby into the world. Zina gritted her teeth. The world narrowed to her own body, the burn in her legs, the weight between them, the silence in Kwame's eyes. Summoning every ounce of willpower, she dug deep, found a ferocious core of strength, and pushed. The relief, when it came, was incandescent, a brief, searing triumph before the next wave of pain. As Zina collapsed against the pillow, panting, the room seemed to hush. The baby's first cry cut through the tension, fierce and alive. Zina reached down, her hands trembling, and touched her daughter's tiny fingers. Warmth flooded her, a promise that life could bloom even in the wasteland of betrayal. But on the bedside table, the unopened envelope leaned like a jagged stone, waiting to shatter everything she'd just fought for. The room pulsed with the baby's soft coos and the hum of medical equipment. Zina lay bundled in blankets, cradling her newborn against her shoulder. Nurse Eka adjusted the baby's tiny cap, humming a lullaby that felt centuries old. Zina's eyes drifted to the envelope on the table. She'd seen envelopes in offices, in movies, but never here, never now. Its crisp white paper stood out in the antiseptic gloom, sealing a promise of ruin. Eka noticed Zina's gaze. You okay, Mama? She asked, voice gentle. Zina nodded, but her throat constricted. She tore her eyes away, focusing on the baby's wisps of hair. Every instinct screamed to protect this new life. Then Eka stepped closer, eyes flicking to the envelope. I found this in the nurse's station after your husband left, she said. I tried to. Well, I wasn't sure if it was meant for you. Zina's heart thundered. He left? When? About 10 minutes ago. Eka paused, swallowing. He didn't say anything to me, just walked out. A cold dread coiled in Zina's stomach. She snapped upright, blanket slipping. And the papers? Eka swallowed again. They're divorce papers, signed by your husband. Silence slammed into Zina, drowning out every other sound. Divorce papers. Signed. By Kwame. Words tumbled through her mind. Abandonment, shame, anger. She felt as though the earth beneath her had split open. Fury ignited. Let me see them, she demanded, voice sharp. Eka carefully handed over the envelope. Zina tore it open with trembling fingers. The ink on the form glared at her. Petitioner, Kwame Mensah. Respondent, Zina Mensah. Grounds for divorce, irreconcilable differences. She sank back, every breath a struggle. Beside her, the baby stirred, cooing softly. Zina pressed her lips to the infant's temple, soaking up that small, perfect life. Aka's voice cut through the haze. What do you want to do? Zina's eyes blazed. I want my lawyer. Zina's world tilted. The baby's cries seemed distant, echoing from a cavern she couldn't reach. Nurse Eka rushed to her side, but Zina's legs buckled. The sharp edges of betrayal pierced her chest, and darkness tugged at the corners of her vision. Hold her steady, EK barked at another nurse while gently lowering Zina back onto the bed. She's in shock. Shock. Zina rasped. Her hand clamped over her chest as though to hold her heart in place. How could he? Flashes of the past hours assaulting her mind. Kwame's stone-faced departure, the deflated look in his eyes, his fingers brushing hers one last time before he turned away. Each memory a drop of acid. EKA placed a cool cloth on Zina's forehead. You need to rest. I'm going to call Barrister Jude. Jude. Zina croaked. He's going to help me? EKA nodded. He's been your family's counsel for years. He'll know what to do. Zina closed her eyes, trying to steady her breath. Pain radiated from her abdomen, but it was nothing compared to the ache in her soul. The baby whimpered. Zina's maternal instincts roared to action. She cradled the baby closer, tears slipping down her cheeks. Minutes passed in tense stillness. Finally, the door opened, and Barrister Jude entered, a tall man in a crisp suit, briefcase in hand. His eyes softened when he saw Zina and her daughter. Zina, he said quietly, approaching the bed. I'm so sorry. Jude, she whispered, voice brittle. He did this. Jude set his briefcase on the counter and opened it. I've already seen the papers. I need to talk to you about your rights, your inheritance, your land. Kwame doesn't know what he's up against. Zina's heart hammered. My land. Jude nodded, pulling out documents. The property your grandmother left you. It's worth more than any marital settlement. We can turn this around. He laid the papers gently in Zina's lap. Hope flickered in her chest, fragile as a moth's wing. She gripped the documents. Then let's begin. A week earlier, in the polished sitting room of the Mensa estate, Mama Teo sat with Kwame across a mahogany table. Sunlight filtered through lace curtains, dancing across their tense faces. Mama, Kwame began, voice low, I know Zina's about to have the baby. But you said this union isn't beneficial. My son, Teo interrupted, fingers steepled. This marriage was arranged for love and duty. But circumstances change. Our family's reputation, our fortunes, are at stake. Kwame shifted uneasily. You believe I should leave her? Now. Teo's lips thinned. Before the birth. Before any claims are made. We need an heir, yes, but a partner who brings dower, not lawsuits. Kwame's shoulders sagged. He'd married Zina for love or something like it. But ambition tugged at him, whispering of opportunities he could barely ignore. How? He asked, voice rough. Teo smiled, predatory. I have Barrister Jude in my pocket. He'll draft the papers. You sign. Leave by dawn. The birth will be hers alone, and without a husband, she'll have no choice but to accept a settlement far below her inheritance. Kwame stared at his mother, nausea churning. And Zina? Our child. Teo rose, smoothing the fabric of her dress. A child without wealth is easily forgotten. Don't let sentiment cloud your judgment. He looked at her, Mama Teo, the matriarch whose power eclipsed his own. The seed of doubt had been planted long ago. Now it blossomed into a cruel resolve. That night, he slipped into the study, pen in hand, and signed his name to the divorce papers while the house slept. Back in the hospital, Zina sat upright in her bed, one hand on her daughter's head, the other clutching the inheritance documents. Nurse EKA watched her with a mixture of awe and concern. How are you holding up? EKA asked softly. Zina stared at her daughter's wide eyes, so trusting, so vulnerable. Rage pulsed through her veins, cold and crystalline. I gave him everything. My heart, my loyalty, and he repaid me with papers. EKA nodded. He underestimated you. Zina exhaled, a long, deliberate breath. I underestimated him. She rose from the bed, baby cradled securely. Each step forced her to grit her teeth against the pain. She made her way to the window, looking down at the parking lot where Kwame's car had vanished hours ago. The setting sun cast long shadows, as if the world itself recoiled from his betrayal. Barrister Jude re-entered, briefcase in hand. I've filed the counterpetition, he announced. We're claiming full ownership of the matrimonial home, the car, even that hotel suite where you both vacationed last year. Zina turned, eyes blazing like coals.
Good.
Let him watch me take every last thing. Jude hesitated. And the divorce? You want to move forward? She glanced at her daughter, and all the fury melted into steel.
Yes.
But on my terms. EKA handed Zina a phone. Your mother is calling. Fingers trembling, Zina pressed accept. Her mother's voice, warm and trembling with love, filled her ears. My Zina, her mother said. I heard everything. You're not alone. Zina's vision blurred with tears. She pressed the phone to her cheek. I know, Mama. This child, she's our hope. Down the hallway, footsteps approached, the echo of harsh leather shoes. Zina's pulse quickened. Had Kwame returned? Was Mama Teo looming in the doorway, ready to gloat? Zina tightened her grip on her daughter and squared her shoulders. Whatever came next, she would face it head-on. The room door opened, and the world shifted on its axis once more, her moment of silent rage giving way to the first act of her grand revenge. The corridor outside Zina's room was silent except for the soft click of the automatic doors closing. Nurse EKA stood just inside, eyes wary, as Zina gathered her belongings. The baby lay sleeping against her chest, swaddled in a pale pink blanket. This room, it feels different now, Zina murmured, voice tight. She paced once, then settled onto the edge of the bed. Sunlight slanted through the window, illuminating dust motes in the stale air. EKA hesitated at the door. He left everything behind, his phone, his wallet. Even his shoes were gone. Zina traced the folds of the pink blanket. He didn't want to risk seeing me with our daughter, she said, tone flat. He knew it would haunt him. A soft knock made them both look up. Barrister Jude slipped inside, briefcase in hand, but paused when he saw Zina's posture, tense, withdrawn. I have the court date, he said quietly, setting his briefcase on the bedside table. It's next Monday. You'll need to be at your strongest. Zina closed her eyes. The bed felt too small, the air too heavy. I thought I'd feel relief, she admitted. That signing the papers, filing suit, it would be cleansing. Instead, it feels like I'm trapped in this hospital, staring at empty walls. Jude nodded. This is just one room on one floor. Soon, you'll own more than these four walls. She opened her eyes, looking at him sharply. You really believe that? He smiled, warm but determined. I've seen your grandmother's will. I know what this land is worth, enough to turn Kwame's world upside down. For the first time since the divorce papers arrived, Zina felt the slightest flicker of hope. She stood, hugged the baby close, and drew a breath that carried a trace of steel. Then let's empty this room in style. That night, Zina couldn't sleep. The hospital's hallway lights dimmed at midnight, leaving her room bathed in shadow. The steady beeping of monitors lulled her into a restless haze. She dozed in and out of consciousness, the baby's soft breathing a constant reassurance. A sudden, muffled sob jolted her awake. It wasn't her daughter. It came from the room next door, a teenage mother alone. The sound reminded Zina of her own helplessness hours ago. Zina swung her feet over the side of the bed and padded into the hall. Nurse EKA was at the nurse's station, charting notes. Did you hear that? Zina whispered. EKA stood, brushing at her scrubs.
Yeah.
Little Aisha. First-time mom. Family's abroad. Zina nodded. Stay with her. EKA offered a tired smile. Go get some rest. I'll handle it. In Aisha's room, a pale 15-year-old rocked her newborn, tears glistening on her cheeks. Zina knocked gently, then slipped inside. The baby stilled at Zina's scent, gazing up with wide, curious eyes. Hey, Zina said softly. You're not alone. She sat on the edge of Aisha's bed, gently taking the baby into her arms. The shift startled the infant, but Zina's calm voice soothed both mother and child. Aisha sniffled. I don't know what to do. My parents, they said this was my fault. Zina wrapped her arms around Aisha. It's not your fault. You're brave. You're doing the hardest thing any mother can do, caring for a life that depends on you, even when you feel alone." They sat in the hush, two mothers bound by midnight tears and soft lullabies. Back in her own room, Zina realized her fight wasn't just about property or revenge. It was about proving that no betrayal could silence a mother's love in the dark. 2 days before the court hearing, Barrister Jude and Zina met in a small conference room at his firm. The air smelled of polished wood and old books. Jude set down a USB drive. "I asked Nurse EKA to retrieve the security footage from the delivery wing," he began. "There were cameras in the hallway. I think you'll want to see what's on here." Zina's pulse quickened. What did he do when he left? Jude plugged the drive into his laptop. The video played, Kwame entering Zina's room just before dawn, carrying a sealed envelope. He paused at the threshold, glancing at the sleeping baby, then closed the door behind him. His face was inscrutable. He placed the papers on the bedside table, then hesitated. His hand brushed the top sheet, as though wanting one last look, before turning and stalking out. "See that?" Jude said. That hesitation can be used to argue emotional distress. He knew the gravity of what he was doing. Zina leaned forward, eyes narrowed. He knew exactly how much damage he'd cause. Jude nodded gravely. "There's more." He clicked again, and the footage showed Kwame pausing in the hallway, looking back at the room as if expecting Zina to appear and plead. She didn't. He exhaled deeply and walked on. Zina felt her chest tighten, part grief, part rage, part triumph. "We'll show this to the judge," she said. If he thought twice, it proves he understood what he was abandoning. Jude closed the laptop. "Exactly. We file a motion to introduce this as evidence of bad faith. It bolsters your case for full property rights." Zina rose, resolve shining. "Then let's bury him in the truth." Morning sunlight streamed through the courtroom's tall windows, illuminating the polished mahogany benches. Zina sat at the plaintiff's table, Baroness Jude beside her, notes neatly stacked. Across the room, Kwame shifted uncomfortably, Mama Teo at his side, her painted smile faltering. The judge, a stern woman with silver-streaked hair, surveyed the room. "We are here on the matter of Mensa versus Mensa, petition for divorce and asset division. Counsel for the petitioner, you may proceed." Kwame's lawyer stood, offering a half-hearted argument about marital property. His voice echoed under the vaulted ceiling, but Zina barely heard him. She was focused on the bench, where Jude took the stand. "Your Honor," Jude began, confident, "we will demonstrate not only that the divorce was filed in bad faith, but that my client holds sole title to multiple assets, including a parcel of land inherited from her grandmother, valued at over 75 Nigerian nairas million. Jude laid out the chain of title, passing photocopies to the court clerk. Zina's heart fluttered as the judge examined the documents, her brow furrowing in interest. Then Jude played the USB footage. The courtroom fell silent as Kwame's figure appeared on screen, betrayal etched in every line of his face. When the video ended, the judge looked up at Kwame. "Mr. Mensa, did you hesitate before filing these papers because you knew the emotional and financial impact on your wife and child?" Kwame's mouth opened, closed, opened again. He stammered, I. The judge held up a hand. "Regardless, Ms. Mensa retains full ownership of the listed assets. This court rules in favor of the counterpetition. Mr. Mensa, you forfeit any claim to your wife's property." A murmur swept the room. Mama Teo's face drained of color. Kwame sank back into his seat, fists clenched. Zina closed her eyes, relief and vindication mingling. The judge continued, "This court also grants Ms. Mensa exclusive custody of the child. Case adjourned." She opened her eyes and met Jude's triumphant grin. She had become the true owner, not just of land and house, but of her own destiny. Back in the conference room, the air crackled with excitement. Jude burst in, briefcase swinging. "Zina, we did it." The judge signed off on everything. Zina allowed herself a small, victorious smile. She clutched her daughter to her chest. The little one yawned, oblivious to the storm she had helped her mother weather. Jude spread out the finalized paperwork across the table. This is the deed to the hotel where Kwame's engagement party was planned. Also, the transfer on the family mansion. It's all in your name. Zina traced the embossed seal of the hotel deed. Memories flashed. The night she and Kwame had danced in that grand ballroom, drunk on champagne and hopes for the future. Now, that future belonged to her, on her terms. Jude leaned closer. There's more. I've drafted the documents for the foundation you mentioned, supporting women abandoned in childbirth. We can incorporate it next week. Tears welled in Zina's eyes. Hope, justice, and the promise of empowering others. She looked down at her daughter, feeling a fierce surge of purpose. Let's do it, she whispered. Jude beamed. One last thing. I have an invitation here. He handed her an envelope with a gilded logo. They still sent it. Kwame's engagement gala. Zina's lips curved into a slow, confident smile. Then I'll see them there. As she walked out into the sunlight, baby in arms and legal victories in hand, Zina felt the full weight of her transformation. Betrayed and abandoned, she had risen. Now, the world would witness the force of a mother scorned, and the empire she would build from her quiet rage. Zina sat at the ornate oak desk in Barrister Jude's office, her daughter sleeping peacefully in a bassinet by the window. Morning light filtered through the blinds, casting narrow stripes across stacks of legal documents. Across from her, Jude watched expectantly. This is it, he said, sliding a thick stack of papers toward her. The heading read, Counterpetition for Divorce and Full Property Award. Beneath, in crisp type, were clauses granting Zina exclusive ownership of all joint assets and a surprise punitive clause. Kwame would forfeit all spousal support. Zina took a steadying breath. Her pen hovered. Flashbacks tumbled through her mind. The moment she first met Kwame at their university graduation, his charming smile, the early mornings she spent bringing him breakfast in bed while he worked on a startup, the laughter they shared before ambition and greed poisoned their bond. She exhaled and began to sign, each signature a strike against betrayal. I, Zina Mensah, do hereby file this counterpetition. Her hand moved deliberately, power thrumming through her veins. When she finished, Jude slid the documents into a sleek black folder. Your move, he said softly. Zina's lips curved into a quiet smile. Let's see how Kwame likes playing by my rules. Outside, the city pulsed with life, unaware that its newest power broker was a mother wielding a pen. 2 months later, an embossed invitation arrived at Zina's doorstep. It bore the familiar crest of the Mensah family and the tantalizing words. The engagement gala of Mr. Kwame Mensah and Ms. Isabella Laurent. Zina held the card in one hand, her daughter in the other. The gala was set in the very hotel she now owned outright, the same grand hall where Kwame had once whispered sweet promises into her ear. Nurse EKA peeked over Zina's shoulder. Are you going? Zina tucked a lock of hair behind her ear. Absolutely. If they expect me to stay home and watch from afar, they've misread their guest list. That evening, she donned a midnight blue gown that shimmered like the night sky. Her daughter, dressed in a tiny white dress, looked up at her with trusting eyes. Zina kissed her temple and whispered, We're going to show them what they've lost. As they arrived, paparazzi flashes erupted. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Is that Zina Mensah? She bought the hotel, they say. Inside, crystal chandeliers cast prisms of light across polished marble. Kwame stood at the center, arm around Isabella's waist, looking every bit the triumphant groom-to-be. He caught sight of Zina and froze, her regal posture, the baby in her arms, the quiet confidence radiating from her like heat. Zina walked forward, head held high. Guests parted like the sea. Isabella's smile faltered. Kwame's jaw clenched. Well, Zina called out, voice carrying across the hall. Fancy meeting you here. Silence fell, and in that stillness, Zina felt the sweet taste of victory. The orchestra's strings tapered off as Zina crossed the marble floor. Every eye in the ballroom was riveted on her. Mama Teo's gasp echoed behind Kwame. Who invited her? Someone whispered. Zina's heels clicked with purpose. She paused before the head table. Under the chandelier's glow, she lifted her daughter for all to see. Allow me to introduce you, she said, voice silky but sharp. This is Amara Mensah. A ripple of shock passed through the room. Kwame's face went pale. Isabella's eyes widened so dramatically they glistened with confusion. Zina continued, unfazed. And you'll be happy to learn that we own this very venue. She let the words hang. Gasps and murmurs swirled. Mama Teo's manicured hand flew to her mouth. Kwame looked as though he might bolt. But Zina pressed on. Congratulations, Mama Teo, she said, nodding toward her mother-in-law. I hope you enjoy tonight's festivities. After all, everything here is courtesy of your former daughter-in-law. Then she turned on her heel, strides assured, leaving a room full of stunned faces in her wake. The next morning's headlines blared in every paper and gossip website. Ex-wife buys out Kwame Mensah's engagement gala venue. Zina Mensah, from betrayed to business mogul. Zina sat in her new executive office overlooking the city skyline. The hotel's management team waited anxiously. On her desk lay blueprints for a renovation wing earmarked for single mothers in need of shelter and job training. Barrister Jude joined her, handing over a fresh market report. Your renovations are already boosting occupancy by 20%, he said. Zina smiled, gazing at a framed photo of her daughter. This hotel is more than bricks and chandeliers. It's a stepping stone for women like me. Her phone buzzed, a text from Isabella Lauron requesting a meeting. Zina typed back, I'll see you at 3 p.m. Bring an open mind. As she tapped send, she felt the full circle of her journey, from a woman shackled by deceit to a leader reshaping her world. At 3 p.m., Zina and Isabella met in the hotel's private lounge, a sunlit room with plush velvet sofas. Isabella, shoulders tense, sipped tea as Zina laid out a generous proposal, a partnership to co-host charity events benefiting single mothers. Isabella hesitated, eyes darting to the signed deed framed on the wall. Hotel Mensah, owner. Zina Mensah. Your terms are, Isabella began, voice shaking. A sharp knock interrupted them. Mama Teo entered, face ashen, lips quivering. She glanced at the deed, then at Isabella. Is this true? Teo croaked. Isabella looked between mother and ex-mother-in-law, guilt and panic in her eyes. It is, Zina confirmed gently. I own the hotel and the estate and the family home. Teo's knees buckled. She sank onto a nearby ottoman, eyes brimming with tears. My son, my family, Teo whispered. Zina felt a pang of sympathy for the woman who had orchestrated her ruin. But she had no words of comfort. Instead, she rose and extended a hand to Teo. You underestimated the strength of a mother, Zina said quietly. It's never too late to support those who need you most. Teo grasped Zina's hand, tears spilling down her cheeks. In that moment, power shifted irrevocably from manipulation to redemption, from cruelty to compassion. And Zina knew the final chapters of her story were yet to be written, not in revenge, but in rebuilding lives. The grand ballroom of the Mensah estate, now rented for Zina's press conference, buzzed with murmurs as local journalists and socialites filled every seat. A long table draped in white bore a single envelope embossed with the DNA laboratory's seal. Zina stood behind it, cradling Amara in her arms. Camera's red lights flashed in unison. Thank you for coming, Zina began, voice steady. She set the baby gently on a high chair beside her. Today, I present proof that Kwame Mensah may not be the biological father of my daughter. Gasps rippled through the crowd. She extended the envelope toward Kwame, who'd been escorted in, looking pale and rattled. If you wish to maintain any rights, you must first submit to this test and publicly acknowledge the results, whatever they are. Kwame's voice trembled when he spoke. Zina, this is cruel. He swallowed hard, glancing at Mama Teo's horrified face in the front row. But I'll do whatever it takes to prove my love for our child. He reached for the envelope, hands shaking, sealing his own undoing as the world watched. 3 days later, Zina and Jude hovered outside the private lab as the technician emerged, DNA report in hand. Zina's pulse raced. Amara cooed in her arms, oblivious to the storm. The technician cleared his throat and handed over the sheet. Zina unfolded it. The matter-of-fact words were almost surreal. Paternal index, 99.87%. Kwame Mensah is the biological father. Her breath caught. She looked up at Jude, whose eyes flickered with triumph and disbelief. "He is," she whispered. "He is." Word of the result had already spread on social media. By midday, trending hashtags like #MensahDNAShock and #FatherhoodConfirmed crowded Twitter feeds. For Kwame, the relief was kinetic, yet layered with humiliation. He had publicly doubted his own fatherhood. Now, the man who'd abandoned them had to face the truth. Amara was his flesh and blood. That evening, Kwame arrived at Zina's newly renovated family home, a modest 3-bedroom on the edge of the city. He stood on the porch, hesitating. Zina answered the door, Amara nestled against her shoulder like a living emblem of his failure and his redemption. "Zina," he began, voice raw. "I was wrong. I betrayed you. I betrayed her. I'm so sorry." His eyes were rimmed red. Shame weighed every word. He offered a small box. "It's a necklace for Amara, so she knows her father loves her, no matter what." Zina regarded him coolly. "I won't deny her a father," she said softly. "But love isn't enough. It never was." She stepped aside. "You can see her, under these conditions. You attend parenting classes, you meet every Saturday at noon, and you publicly acknowledge your mistakes." Kwame nodded, tears slipping freely. In that quiet foyer, a fractured family began to rebuild its fragile bridge. Weeks later, Zina stood on a stage before hundreds at the inaugural gala for the Amara Foundation, dedicated to supporting mothers abandoned in childbirth. The converted hotel ballroom, once Kwame's triumphant engagement venue, now glowed with hopeful light. Behind Zina, a banner proclaimed, "From betrayal to empowerment." She spoke with conviction. Too many women suffer in silence. No mother should face labor alone or fear losing everything because of a spouse's callousness. Applause rose as she introduced the foundation's first initiative, safe housing and legal aid for single mothers. In the audience, Kwame watched, proud, humbled, but forever relegated to a secondary role in a movement she led. When the speech ended, Zina descended the stage, mingling with guests. Journalists snapped photos of her exchanging a curt nod with Mama Teo, whose expression had transformed from contempt to reluctant respect. Kwame approached, hands braced at his sides. Zina shook his hand, firm, final. "Thank you for showing me what I'm capable of," she said. He smiled through tears, accepting that her rise would forever eclipse his own. Sunset bathed Zina's new mansion in golden light as she carried Amara up the front steps. Reporters gathered at the gate, eager for her next statement. Flashbulbs exploded when she reached the grand doorway. She paused on the threshold, looking out over the city that had watched her fall and watched her soar. Holding the baby high, she addressed the crowd. "This home stands for every woman who's been told she's less worthy because she dared to love. I refuse to break. I refuse to yield." The crowd erupted. In that moment, Zina was no longer just a wronged wife. She was a symbol of resilience, a matriarch of change. As she stepped inside, the doors closing softly behind her, she felt the weight of every chapter lift. Ahead lay new stories, of empowerment, of solidarity, of a legacy that would outshine any betrayal. And through it all, she carried Amara, proof that a mother's love, once ignited, could never be extinguished. The end.